See, this is why I don't like to make preparations for videos, because just today it took me 2.5 hours, and 2.5 hours maybe doesn't sound like a lot, but compared to nothing, it definitely is. And it's not like it would make a good review, a great review, or whatever you would like to call my reviews, or if anyone would actually even watch them in the first place. But enough of all of that, and that's also the reason why I won't do any retakes. So it will be the way it is, maybe a little bit more enjoyable, I don't know. So let's get into the review of the HTC U11. And the first time I've seen the specs, I've seen it on paper, I had very high expectations, and in this video I want to let you know if those are fulfilled. So let's get into the design and build quality here first. And as you can already see, I also have the Moto X4 here, which is the kind of closest competitor at the moment in terms of price and overall quality. So I will definitely make a separate comparison just for these two, but not today. Or let's actually compare the sizes a little bit already. As you can see here, the U11 is taller. It feels though a little bit narrower, but it's actually the feel that is something where I'm not quite so sure. Of course, it is bigger than something like Xiaomi Mi 6, and something that in terms of price you could actually compare with another, but I don't think so, because this is more of a device that is locally available, and that's why I won't consider these not in this review. Now, what did I mention already about the feel? It is that this phone feels almost empty, like there is no battery inside. And then there is also this thing, as you can maybe see, you can actually squeeze in the back. Yes, I know there is a squeeze feature on the side, but not on the back. And it feels incredibly hollow because this actually has some give. And therefore, even though this phone actually feels super nice in the hand because all of those rounded curves and actually very good build quality, because the buttons are amongst the very best ones. Great tactile feedback. Placement maybe a little bit lower than I usually am used to it, but this would have all been fine. But the phone feels so good. Of course, yeah, huge bezels, as you can actually see here, even more so on the bottom, and still even on the top. And all of that would have been fine, since the Moto X4, for example, also doesn't have the smallest button, but it just feels almost too cheap for its weight and so on. But I don't want to get too much into that. Of course, we can see the back. It is one that attracts a lot of fingerprints, but same as also on the front. They can be easily wiped away. We have a flat front, by the way, with a nice transition, and everything transitions just so smooth into this device. And that's why I really like the in-hand feel still a lot. And someone who wants maybe an even lighter phone, it will be fine, because this is something that bothered me just during my build quality test. In normal use, it didn't really bother me, but it takes away a little bit of the premium feel. Now the camera does protrude a little bit, as you can see here. Also the LEDs. On the top we have the microphone, SD card and SIM card tray. Left side is blank, and on the bottom we can see, which is a little bit of an odd arrangement, because the speaker, very bad placement, HTC, and the Type-C, of course, microphones and something else. Buttons, like I said, great. Here extra, even you can see some texture, which is great, but I usually press the volume down, but you will get used to that. Now we also have a fingerprint reader. And that one works, I would say, really good, because as you can see here, it's not the very fastest one. It's very reliable, and once the screen is on, which takes a little bit longer, it is fast. So not the biggest fan of it, but it works totally out fine. And as you have seen, two backlit capacitive buttons. I would really wish for an option to switch these out. I don't see why it would be an issue. Notification LED should be there, and if not, I will let you know, because I actually completely didn't really notice it throughout my testing. I don't really bother so much about these anymore, since they are so often not even available on many phones. So what's the next thing to get into? The display. So let's check that. What do we have in terms of features? And by the way, this is not the Android One version. This is the Sense version. So maybe you will get some more options than you would on this one, because as you can see here, this is everything still very typical. Backlight, navigation bar, and so on. And as you can already see also, no option to maybe change the saturation, which is not really necessary at all though, because the display with just about 500 lux isn't the brightest one, but it gets the job done. Viewing angles are also okay. Of course, they dim towards the sides, but therefore the calibration, I have to say, is really, really good, because there is this subtle, oversaturated look to it, but still very natural and pleasant. So I definitely like that. Definitely a lot. White point is also quite good. Maybe clarity is not the very best one, or let's say there are just better ones out there. Because in normal use, even though the 1080p screen isn't the highest resolution anymore, it was totally a good job. And that's why I will also give it a very good, even though there is a little bit of room for some better ones. Now about the speaker. I'm gonna keep this short. This speaker, first of all, placement is bad, at least for me when I have my finger here. It gets blocked all the time, but it's also not that much of an issue while playing. It's not too bad, but sometimes if you hold on to a little bit closer, it could get an issue, but it's the actual quality. It sounds not really high quality, it crackles quite early, and it's just not loud, so the overall balance is nothing special, which actually is a little bit disappointing. Also, the lack of the headphone jack and even an adapter. This is just something I can't understand, and that's why I won't even rate the headphone jack. You get a really nice pair of earbuds along with that, this is okay, but the lack of an adapter, which you will have to get maybe separately, which should be no problem because the one of the HTC U11 works, that is not okay. So let's get into the performance here. Clear them all, and let's see how fast they launch. Since this is using the 630, you should expect about 630 performance, and this is absolutely in line. And what HTC is definitely very known for is very good optimization, and you can definitely feel this here. Because even though it's of course not the very fastest phone, what it is very smooth. I saw little to no lag, it's quite responsive, but what it therefore also achieves the kind of higher fluidity for is a little bit more motion blur. This is something what also actually Google does for quite some time. As you can see, everything is very fluid. But there is quite some motion blur going on, which I think makes it easier to kind of cover up some possible lags that, for example, I've seen on the 630 on the Moto X4. But overall, top performance, really nice. And what I've actually noticed compared to the X4 is that the multitasking with also just 3 GB RAM in this version works better, because I did not really notice. And this is actually a clever trick, because what they do, for example, if you are in this app and if you switch to the next one, or let's say this one, what it does usually is actually the first moment you get into the app, it actually still shows you the cached image, and then it reloads, which kind of makes it feel like the device is faster than it is. But you see this reload, so it kind of caches still. Because of 3 GB of RAM, this will happen, but it's actually way more subtle, I would say. And that is, I would say, a good, nice trick, even though it's still a trick. Gaming performance was a little bit flaky, because especially things like, for example, Riptide still worked quite okay, not quite as smooth, definitely not quite as consistent as some other games, which was a little bit odd, but then mostly especially the later on levels of Asphalt Extreme, which you won't see here because this works so far, were actually having severe slowdowns. I think they have to fix this, or they definitely can easily fix this, because the chip definitely can handle it. But usually I would still expect that for most games that are not super intensive to get a good experience. And what it definitely does not is heat up, which is top. Which brings me to the battery. A full charge, 1 hour and 40. With though 13% for 1 hour of YouTube is just a little bit below the average of 12%. And here is my biggest issue. We have only a 2600 or 2600 milliamp hour battery, which is, like, if I didn't make my math wrong, 13% less than the Moto X4 has. And if you would calculate, let's say 50% less of battery life, you should have ended up at around 5 to maybe even 5.5 hours, especially even easily possible since HTC on the U11 and on the HTC U Ultra was known for their small batteries, but still great battery life because of the great optimization. And this is for some reason not present here, because I only got about 4.5 hours, maybe around that, maybe a little bit more, but usually not, actually even a little bit less on mobile data. And I have no values for wireless because I just last weekend didn't get the time to really check it on Wi-Fi. I would assume maybe 7 hours, but that's just an assumption. Standby drain, top, that's still great, but I don't know why the drain is actually higher as it should have been. Because the software can't beat it. The software is really well optimized, even though we still have, since this is actually already running Oreo, since I have it, as you can see here. I've seen somewhere that the update is quite new, but I had it already out of the box with Oreo. We still have the same annoyances from Oreo, which means that you see the background task in a notification and so on if something is running in the background, which I think annoying. And also that every notification actually makes a sound, even the one that turns into do not disturb mode and other ones that usually don't make a sound. That's Oreo. I'm not gonna blame this on this phone. Now the launcher, as you can see here, standard launcher, kind of like the Pixel one, you won't really get anything extra. So the notifications, as you can see, this is stock Oreo. This is nothing really changed, which is a good thing though also. Of course we have Edge Sense, but I'm not going into that because I actually turned it off because I simply don't see a benefit of it. If you do, it's fine. And there are of course some great options to use it, but I personally, I maybe need a little bit more time to get used to it. But since I'm just not used to it due to not any other phone really having it, yeah, maybe I would need a little more time to actually find these benefits. Display I already talked about. Sound, as you can also see already, we have noise cancellation with the earbuds, some extra options, and it didn't want to get back. Other than that though, it is looking like stock Android and it's behaving like that, which is good because HTC is known for fast updates, because this is one of very few phones with already Oreo. So good. And updates usually come for quite a decent amount of time and you get it quick. It's a clean software, no bloat and so on. So yeah, I'm happy with that. But already talking about the camera, what I have to say is that the software I meant, the camera app is absolutely top, because let me just show you how convenient it is to use. Because here, as you can see, if you want to switch the HDR mode, you tap, you have HDR auto and you have HDR or off. Usually what happens on most phones, you tap and then you have a menu that you have to select with. I think this works way faster. The same also goes for the flash. So this, in my opinion, is way better. Of course, you can change between video and photo, the front facing and back facing cam. There are some extra modes. Here you can easily change the resolution. Panorama mode is there. Pro mode, of course, as well, with white balance order and so on. So that's typical stuff, nothing really amazing here. Video, of course, hyperlapse. Video does not support 1080p 60, just 4K and 1060. Slow motion and selfie photo, but you will miss some extra features, like, for example, a bokeh mode or something else, since we don't have a dual lens cam and so on. But I would say, let's already talk about the actual qualities of this cam. So let's get into it. And as you can already see from this distance, which is absolutely normal, it's not quite 100% in focus yet, but that is totally fine. But here it is, and to this point as well. And the sweet spot is actually quite easy to achieve. So I'm really happy with the results. Actually, I would really like to give it a grade, but I just can't fully because there is no autofocus, which kind of prevents me often. And the fact that I had quite some misfires. Not so much on the front-facing cam, but on the back-facing cam, but here also well. And I actually did not show you these. In case you're wondering what this is the kind of software flash that it offers, because this I think is with and this without. But what actually happens with the flash is that the screen turns orange a little bit. I'm not quite sure why orange, because most apps use white. But even indoors, super nice sharpness, super detailed, colors are nice. Yeah, I'm really happy with that. Really, really. As you can see, of course, in low light it diminishes, but the front-facing cam actually in low light is not the issue. And now let's see what low light can actually offer. As you can see here, this is what I'm talking about. Low light is super grainy and blurry, and I'm not quite sure. With the flash, of course, it gets better, but once again here, this is weak. Here also as well. There is though noticeable, as you can see here, if you shift the cam, you can get better results sometimes, but also here white balance doesn't offer. So I'm not super happy with the front-facing cam. With good lighting though, absolutely nice. So let's get outside, even though it's the winter here, so definitely no great weather. You can see that the results actually are surprisingly good. And I would almost like to give the cam an almost great, just because of the super nice, saturated and sharp, overall well-balanced. But as you can already see here, I got quite some misfires. And that is my main reason why I won't give it a higher rating, which I otherwise would have given this camera quite often. But as you can see, a little bit overexposed. But here, once again, not super sharp. Here, not every time. This is the HDR mode. You can use it. It definitely brightens up the picture. Yep, absolutely fine. But here, once again, you can get really nice shots. I really like the colors. Autofocus was usually also quite good, same as the shutter. But then again, just a little bit too many blurry pictures. But otherwise, really, really nice. Now let's get into the video. This is 4K. And it doesn't really look like 4K in my opinion. So I'm not quite sure what's going on here, because I don't really know. The autofocus works nice and smooth, but the camera, as you can already see, is very, very shaky, because there seems to be no stabilization, and I didn't, due to the cold, had the very best steady hands. But as you can see, this is shaking like crazy, and it's just not super detailed. Of course, with more sunlight, it would have been better results, but at the same time, I've used the Moto X4, and that definitely had better results. So let's get to the next video. As you can see here, this is 1080, and 1080, at least at 30 frames, is super nicely stabilized, because as you can see, now everything is super smooth, and now everything is great. Of course, it's not super sharp still, but I would actually say stick at this phone with 1080p 30, because you get this way better stabilization, and the quality actually doesn't really diminish a lot. But what I want to still show is the front-facing cam, because for some reason that video didn't load. You can see, if you can, that the quality is really good. Actually very good, because sharp, nice, detailed, not that shaky, good. The only thing that I've noticed is that the microphone actually seems a little bit on the thinner side. Of course, there are some extra options with this, I think, surround audio and so on, which makes things a little bit better. But yeah, I definitely like what the front-facing cam is doing, especially even in low light. Because if I go now, which it doesn't want to, even low light looks good. Trust me. Okay, so let's get to the summary, I would say. So, no, that's not it. This is it. Now, let's talk about the build. Really good, but the hollow back and plasticky feel prevents me from giving it a higher rating, but therefore the buttons are absolutely top in terms of feel. Now the design, great, and especially very smooth in-hand feel, but it also feels a little bit empty and too lightweight. Fingerprint reader is really good, very reliable, just not really fast. The display, very good, very nice calibration. Speaker, decent, neither loud nor clean. Headphone jack, not available, not even an adapter, and therefore you get at least earbuds, but that's not quite an excuse for me. Performance, very good overall, and the 3 GB of RAM work better than expected, with some added motion blur to cover that, I think so. Battery, yeah, that's good, maybe quite good. Actually weaker than I expected for some reason, and I'm not quite sure what it's all about. I did actually even reset the phone trying to change that, but it didn't. Software, very good, clean and slightly enhanced, solid updates and great camera app. Front-facing cam, very good. Front-facing video cam, also very good, with some slight little visible artifacts that prevent a higher rating. Low-light cam, that one was noticeably weaker than the rest, too grainy, too blurry. Main cam, very good, just not super consistent. Video cam, quite good, but the 4K was too shaky, not really sharp and detailed, and 1080p offers at least stabilization, but of course less sharpness still. Value, decent. Now let's get to some extra notes. The lack of high quality feel and big bezels make it feel a little bit too pricey in my opinion. Battery life might be just a thing for people making and consider better alternatives, whatever that means. We will get into that. Camera actually sometimes almost scrapes at the next higher rating, which definitely shows the potential. And at least with better weather, if I would had that, it would have shown. Camera lacks some popular features like, for example, bokeh or the dual lens system with some wide angle lens or anything like that. And it is a little bit lacking consistency. But overall, you get a really nice overall experience for sure. But I'm not quite sure if that's these days quite enough. And I switched the camera for no good reason. Let's get to the ending. Yeah, for the amount of details, actually, I'm still good in time. So I'm not quite sure about the US price. I think at around 350 the phone should get cheaper. And I'm quite sure that actually like in half a year you will get this for 250. And for 250, okay, I don't know what else will be available then I can actually still quite easily recommend right now. For 350, not quite so much because of some other competitors. For example, the Moto X4. If you want to import, just to mention it once, something like the Xiaomi Mi 6, or there are many other alternatives available if you want to import. But like I said, I don't really consider this to be an option, at least not for most people that don't regularly import. Let's keep it on the local market. And here, you could get something like a Moto G5, Moto G5 Plus, for example, which doesn't really is weaker a lot, but noticeably cheaper. So this, in my opinion, just doesn't feel quite balanced enough, because if they would have maybe built it a little bit more premium, that would have helped. If they would have maybe improved the battery life, that's actually one of my things that I don't really have such an easy time, because for the same price, you can get pretty much the same qualities, but also get the great battery life that you for some reason don't get here. And even if something is wrong with my battery life in this review, and you add like an hour more, it will be at least 1 hour less due to just having a 2600 mAh battery compared to the rest. The speaker is also not even close to an HTC level with boom sound. The headphone jack is not there, but with the earbuds it should be fine and so on. But as you can see, you make quite some compromises. No headphone jack, no extra features on the cam, which is something super important for many. And even though the camera is super capable, shows a lot of potential, people these days want features. I personally don't really need them, but if the price falls, yeah, absolutely. But you should definitely maybe check some alternatives, as well as my comparison with the X4, which shows that a more rounded package for the same price is actually possible. Because just on paper, they look super, super strong competitors, super similar. But reality shows the difference. And that's where I'm going to leave it. If you have any extra questions, down there. And if you want to know, let me know that you liked it, maybe a thumbs up. Otherwise, that's it. Have a nice day.